Is that right?
Yeah, so we have a couple different data collections here. The background is GMRT, so it's kind of a base layer of bathymetry. And then the bluish in the abyss or area, this is Okeanos data, and then exactly that purple brighter data is data that we've collected on this expedition as we've run our multi-beam sonars. Yeah.
Very cool.
I could stare at this all day.
As we're descending here, we'll do a bit of a roll call around the room to just let you know who your tectonic turtles are for this midnight to 4 a.m. local time shift.
Go, Steve, go.
Oh, in the front row, in the video chair, this is Steve.
Next to I can talk. Next to Steve in the Argus chair is Dan.
I'm Gabby. I'm in the Herc seat.
My name is Kate. I am in the navigator seat.
Sarah Bremer. I'm in the data logger seat.
You're real quiet.
My microphone is closer now. All right, Sarah Bremer, data logger seat.
Hi, Emil, co-watch lead.
Hi, I'm Andrea, geologist, co-watch lead.
And I'm Kim, sitting in your SCF chair. If you go to nautiluslive.org and scroll down, you can see the current watch and learn more about your awesome tectonic turtles here by clicking on any of our bios. We are taking your questions at our website, nautiluslive.org. And I'll start off with a question of my own. So Emil, what this particular dive plan that we're looking at here today, what was the idea behind it, and why did we set this particular dive plan on this seamount?
This is a deeper seamount to begin with, and so I believe what Chris was after here was just some good geological collections. We don't expect as much biology as we've seen up in the sweet spot depth zone for corals and sponges, 2,500 meters to 1,500 meters. So yeah, did you discuss this one with Chris, Andrew? No? Yep, it's just going to be a deeper dive. Maybe we'll be in for some deep sea surprises down there at 3,000 meters.
I'm hoping we see some ripple marks. They might be the deepest ripple marks that we've seen thus far. So we're looking for the deepest ripple marks we can find, and to get a lot of images of them, and maybe a scoop of the sediment, as well as the other angular rocks that we're always looking for.
Saw a pretty big rock in the lab this morning on that center table. Is that a one that we collected yesterday, or is that a previous collection? It looked.
I think that's the previous collection.
Oh boy, it was big. I did not try to lift it. I have not been working out.
No, thank you.
So do we anticipate all of these seamounts are approximately the same age, or do you think that we are going to get different ages from the different seamounts that we visited throughout this expedition?
They will probably share that they're within, say, 80 million, or if they are within 70 million, but they would probably be, if they're related to an age progressive seamount track, or if they are an age progressive seamount track, they might be have a difference in age of around 5 to 10 million years within that age progression.
And if they are age progressed, meaning that some formed slightly before others, which ones do you expect to be the oldest of this chain that we're exploring?
The oldest would be the northernmost, we suspect, but we're not sure.
So Don Quixote or Ha'a'eo.
Is that because the volcano stays in the same place and the crust moves over it? Or?
That's correct. So the hot spot stays in the same location as the crust moves over it. And that's how the age progressive seamount track is an indicator of volcanoes that form from that process, which we call a plume-derived volcano or a hotspot volcano.
I think one of the clues that got Chris, Kelly, and others thinking that this could be the southern extension of the Wentworth seamount chain is the Schmidt seamount is a hybrid. It's some younger seamount created when the Hawaiian Ridge was created, an older seamount. So the Hawaiian Ridge like erupted and built onto this older seamount that
overprinted.
About 90 million years or 80? Forget the age of that original seamount there, but it's Cretaceous. And that one lines up with Wentworth and the general northwest southeast direction that some of these other seamount chains line up.
Yeah, and there were some dates from a Dalrymple paper that suggested age progression in that track as well.
To get a little bit more of a context on where we are, there's a couple things you can do if you're listening at home. You can go to our website, nautiluslive.org, and click on Papahānaumokuākea, which is in our status update. That'll take you to the homepage for the Marine Monument where we've been exploring and continue to explore. This is west of the Hawaiian Island chains, and you can see some maps there. We are operating in the extended boundary of the monument. Something else that's kind of cool to do, if you go to Google Earth and find the Hawaiian Islands, then you can kind of see some images of these underwater seamount chains. And the one that we are exploring extends below the Hawaiian chain, kind of heading south there. You can't miss it. Second star on the left and straight on till morning.
So I wonder all these cool maps that Nautilus, Falcor, and Okeanos have been making. When are they going to show up in Google Oceans or Google Earth?
So if you
keep waiting.
Yeah, actually, so all of the Okeanos data that we're seeing here is in Google Earth right now. So
is it?
Yep.
Oh.
So if you pull up Google Earth, you'll see all these seamounts in finer detail, and you'll see where they didn't map is not in finer detail.
Do you have to turn on something special like Google Oceans or something, or does it just default?
Nope, it defaults. So Google Earth uses the GEPCO bathymetry data set as their base, and there's like kind of the pipeline from data acquisition, data processing. It takes it depends on kind of the organization, but maybe a year or two to get the data into Google or into GEPCO, and then Google Earth just refreshes with the latest GEPCO base map.
I think it shows up quicker in GMRT.
Yeah. I think there's so many different pipelines too, but a lot of times GMRT will then feed the data to the GEPCO
What is
team.
GMRT? Is that something that...
What is GMRT?
Global Multi-Resolution, is it topography?
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
Lamont Doherty, I think, created it.
Is there an app for it that regular people can get, or is that...
It's a website,
yeah.
the GMRT mapping tool.
So what they'll do is kind of data submitted to them, and they have a QA/QC process. And so data isn't just bathymetry data collected, and this is data collected from a wide variety of vessels. And once they QA/QC it, it gets kind of thrown into or incorporated into a global grid, and where we don't have high resolution multi-beam data, they use the satellite altimetry data, and so they create this merged data set and that's publicly available, so you can download it with the altimeter data in the background or without, so you can get just high-res data where it exists, or you can get kind of this composite grid that includes satellite data as well. And the GMRT location in Emil, it's at Columbia University. What is the name of the research group?
The Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory.
Yeah, so they're also one of the regional data centers for the GEPCO 2030 project as well. So they all kind of work together to push this global bathymetry grid that's publicly available.
GMRT.com?
Yep. And so you can download their data as kind of a .xyz format or in a netCDF format or as a GeoTIFF. You just create a bounding box and hit download.
So what metrics do they use to do quality control and quality assurance? How do they?
I'm not too familiar with that process. I do know that we've had people from that GMRT team out on the ship kind of as mappers in different capacities, which I haven't been sailing with them, but I know that they always have a lot of fun, especially because they get away from their desk and get to be acquiring data rather than processing data. One of the big things they look at is refraction, so kind of the quality of the sound speed that was applied to the cast, and they have some kind of methods and tools and tricks for improving the sound speed to be able to get better data. And if there's any existing data where maybe data is submitted, they'll do a comparison. So, okay, we have this one line and it crossed the line of old data. Do they line up? Are they within 100 meters, within 50 meters? Is it what we expect? Yeah, and then there's also kind of, when you're collecting data, a statistical process of kind of the accuracy of your data.
And Kate, is that related to the seabed 2030?
Yep, so they're all working together. And so data can be submitted directly to seabed 2030, and they have different regional data centers as well. So there's one in New Hampshire, one in England, one in New Zealand. I'm sure I'm missing some other locations as well. And the majority, or they work in conjunction or kind of together with the GMRT as well. So there's no groups are doubling up on their efforts. They're all kind of strategizing and working together.
You can find more information about seabed 2030 at seabed2030.org. One of the things that was amazing to me on this expedition our first task when we arrived on site here was to map what we're calling Seamount A, which is the southernmost seamount. It hadn't been mapped in this higher quality, and I guess I didn't really understand how much that mattered.
Is Seamount A the previously unnamed seamount?
Yeah, Seamount A, the previously unnamed seamount.
That's a real original name we gave it there.
They didn't consult this watch on the name, or we would have come up with something jazzy for sure. But the estimated summit changed by something like 800 or 900 meters from the data that was there before to the data that we mapped. And so it's not a small difference in some instances here.
Are you sure Seamount A wasn't already taken?
I think it was like Seamount Alpha and A Seamount. Those were taken. So, we had to deviate a tiny bit. Only about 20% of the world's oceans are mapped in this way, and a lot of that is near coastlines. So these features that are out in the middle of the ocean, making our best estimates from much less exact data than what we're able to get. So
we're pretty spoiled on Nautilus to have this kind of information before we throw two priceless vehicles over the side of the ship and start lowering them down on a wire.
Is Project 2030 the idea of mapping the whole seafloor by 2030?
Yeah, if anybody else knows some specifics, they should chime in too. So the strategy is to get the country's EEZ zones, so 200 nautical miles out, is to get those first and then move into the global ocean. And the goal is to get it mapped to a reasonable modern resolution. So in most cases, 100 meters or 100 square meters or higher resolution. So
What is it now? What's the resolution of some of the stuff you see on
yeah,
Google
so
Earth?
most of the Google Earth data where we don't have available bathymetry or available multi-beam bathymetry is from satellite-derived bathymetry, and that resolution's around 400 meters.
Wow.
At best, yeah. I thought it was a few kilometers, but I know it's improved with the
Yeah, I think,
inclusion of cryosat.
yeah, I'm just going from when I download the GEPCO data sets, it always comes in 400 square meters, so.
Oh, they might, yeah, what they might do is grid it at that, but
Yeah.
I think the actual data estimates from satellite are a few kilometers still.
A few kilometers.
Yeah, sure. So you're looking at slopes in the sea surface, and it takes quite a large feature to create that bulge, have enough gravity to cause the water to bulge up around it. So some of the seamounts that are smaller than a kilometer, well, like knolls, if they're not seamounts, they're knolls, they may not show up. I know on the previous NA133, when we were mapping Liliuokalani Ridge, there were some small features that were barely noticeable in the satellite data, but had a lot of detail when we mapped it with multi-beam.
So the satellite somehow does that with gravity? How does that work?
Yeah, so it converts the slope of the sea surface into a gravity anomaly. It figures how much of a gravity anomaly down there on the seafloor must be creating this slope in the sea surface. And so that's due to either, it could be the height of a seamount or the density of the basalt in that section of seafloor. So it's a little tricky to convert from a gravity anomaly to a depth estimate. So it helps if you have some single beam sonar, some fathometer soundings around that you can help calibrate your guesstimate with. But what will throw it off is if you've got fathometer data that happened to go over a school of fish and assumed it was the seafloor. And I think that's happened in several cases around seamounts where they were supposed to be 20-some meters deep at the summit, and they turn out to be 1,000 meters deep.
So they're working that out by the difference of the surface of the ocean?
Yeah, so when we finally got radar altimeters flying, so GeoSat was flown by the U.S. Navy in the 1980s, and then we had Topex Poseidon came along in 92, I believe it was. Yeah, NASA and CNES, the French space agency, partnered on Topex Poseidon, and it was very accurate satellite measuring sea surface heights down to a few centimeters accuracy. Then we started to get some, there was a ERS, there was another European altimeter before that. So, yep, then David Sandwell from Scripps and Walter Smith from NOAA worked together to provide the first global look at the seafloor based on that data.
So how much of a change in the sea level are they measuring to get this information? Is it centimeters or meters or
maybe a meter spread out, over several kilometers?
Wow.
So we're getting another viewer question. Thanks, viewers, for keeping those questions coming in. We love to answer your questions during the blue water portion of our dives. A viewer wants to know if we've worked with NASA and if NASA could apply some of our mapping and exploration techniques if we ever make it to an ocean moon like Europa or Enceladus.
Yeah, we totally work with NASA. we've picked up meteorites with Herc. And we've also had some scientists aboard who collaborate with NASA with their mapping to ground truth some of the technology that NASA's using, as Emma was just talking about.
There's been some collaboration on the use of telepresence as well, since NASA would need to use that to guide exploration of, say, Europa. If they've got a whole program, Ocean Worlds, to consider areas to explore for water and life. And so, yeah, they're trying to get smart about the most efficient way to use telepresence for that purpose.
You can find out more about all of these missions on our website, nautiluslive.org. If you put NASA in the search bar, you'll find a photo album from a previous expedition to Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument, where Nautilus was testing an underwater gripper. Some really cool photos in that photo album. Just search for NASA on our website.
Was there also some interaction with the ISS? I thought I heard about this, where they were watching the live stream or they were somehow connected to SPL.
Oh,
Am I making that up?
I think
I'm
that
not
might have
sure.
happened when Nautilus was in the Mediterranean, but I don't know the full details there.
Another connection that you can see is, if you're interested in learning more about the recovery of the meteorite fragments, that was up in my neck of the woods, up in Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary. You can just type meteorite in the search bar at our website, and you'll see a photo album, a blog, and a video about that expedition that took place in, the first dives were in July of 2018, and then they revisited the site in September of 2020. Very, very cool expedition. Thanks so much for your question. It seems like every time a viewer asks a question, I search on our website and learn something myself, so thanks so much. All right. I don't think we've answered this question yet on the Tectonic Turtles Watch, but a viewer wants to know, what's the most exciting thing you've seen on this expedition so far? Always a great question. Does anybody have a most exciting thing?
Shark.
Shark.
Yeah, seeing the white tips just astern of Nautilus while we're recovering the vehicles, that heightened my, I got my spider senses tingling there.
And not just once.
Right.
They seem to be there almost every time we recover. They got some really nice stills last night as well.
Yeah,
or whenever that was we recovered. Yesterday, this morning.
Yeah, it was all blurs.
There's been many highlights of the coral, what we called Coral Canyon up on, that was on AO Seamount, right? Second dive.
I think it was second dive, yeah.
Finding a, great, it was the most diverse community of corals I had seen in my time coming out of Nautilus. And then the Spongetopia, or whatever we're calling the...
I don't think Dulcinea's Papaku is going to stick for that. It's too many syllables. I tried.
And that was up on...
That was on
Don
Don Quixote.
Quixote,
Yeah.
It's hard to say what's the most exciting. It's like there's so many exciting moments. I don't know. I'd have to think about that for a while to think about the most exciting.
The fish always wake you up when they swim into the field of view.
Yeah.
Those anglerfish sure are cute. We've seen a few of the Chaunacops anglerfish, Chaunacops coloratus, and they look so upset all the time. It somehow makes them cuter.
My niece and nephew have a book called The Pout Pout Fish. And I feel like that applies to this fish.
Pout fish. Yeah, I think for me, mine's going to be something that people are not going to probably be able to relate to. Mine's going to have to be the ripple marks.
I was going to say,
Relate.
I think my favorite are, yeah, the kind of the cool ridges that we've been seeing and the different basalt formations and so forth.
Oh, did you like the columnar jointing?
I do.
Ooh.
I've always been a fan of that.
Yeah, I like it too.
On land, underwater.
Yeah.
I think some of those sponges we saw on the first dive.
Oh, the Dr. Zeus?
The big mushroom
and
sponges.
there weren't many of them, but they were big and beautiful.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, some of those sponges we measured using the lasers, they were over 2 meters tall. Just wild to think about.
I still think that somebody should do 3D replications of these sponges and then do 3D printing of them and make a sponge basically park, and you can walk through all these different models of sponges.
Can you send a little note to my wife, authorize the resin 3D printer purchase?
Just a little note?
It's
well,
way
Christmas
too,
is just around the corner.
Way too slow with the PLA.
Yeah, so how much does one of those cost? I'm just curious.
You can get a little one now for a couple $100, the resin printer, which is...
Yeah.
You probably earned that this year. Just ask Santa.
So make a mini sponge garden.
Yeah.
The bigger size ones are up in the $500 range. They became really popular for the resin printing for the dentistry industry, using them to make models of people's teeth and gums and such, because they're faster and way more accurate than the PLA printers.
And what is the biggest 3D printer you can actually anybody can buy on the market? What is the biggest thing it can print?
The under $1,000 range ones are, I don't know.
6 by 6 by 6.
We're talking inches?
6 by 6 by 6
inches, yeah.
Oh.
Like they sell them in volumes typically.
Yeah, they're a little bigger than that. I have a one at home that was less than $500, and it does 8 inches by. It's probably 8 by 8 by 10 or something like that.
Oh wow!
So then what you'd have to do is design a giant mushroom sponge Lego kit and print pieces of it individually, and then stick them together.
Printed Legos, but you can actually submit to Lego, and they will do a custom model.
Oh my goodness!
Really?
Yeah, Falcor did one of the entire vessel, and they have ROV Sebastian on the back, and it has the A-frame.
That's amazing.
It's quite big. It's probably half a meter long.
Dan, do you want to make a note on the 3-phase?
Yeah, Roger.
I'm thinking deep sea sponge chest set.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh,
that would
maybe
be cool.
then I could remember the Latin names.
Well, who would be the king?
Good question.
Poliopogon.
Yeah.
And the rook could be the long-stalked space mushroom.
Dr. Seuss Bishops.
E.T.
What are we
E.T.
at,
could be the little
42?
ponds, a whole
That's what I'm
row of
thinking.
ETs.
Yeah.
Row of ET eyes
42
looking
is
at
the
you.
average there. At
I
exactly
think you have a market
1,500.
for that, Emma. I think some Corps of Exploration members would be all over that. We do hope to get some photo highlights up on the website, nautiluslive.org, in the next few days. So stay tuned there for some spectacular photos of some of these mission highlights that we are talking about here.
Yeah, if we made that sponge garden and we made it life size, right, to scale, you could call it walk along the seafloor take a walk along the seafloor.
So there's a guy
Nice outreach.
in Oregon.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's a paper mache artist, and he does life-size paper maches. If you're driving up I-5 from like Albany, Corvallis area up to Salem, it's on the right side. He's got this huge duck out there, and he's got some Dr. Seuss-ish stuff, but well, he'd be into doing some life-size mushrooms or Dr. Seuss sponges.
Yeah, I must have driven that route, I don't know, hundreds, maybe thousands of times, and I can't remember a giant duck. How did I miss it?
Maybe that just doesn't strike you as being out of the
part
ordinary.
Of your normal existence.
Yeah, that's disturbing. So it's before the Enchanted Garden?
That's very funny.
Or Enchanted Forest is before that?
I believe it is south of the Enchanted Forest, yeah.
Is it a home on a hill?
It is.
And then it's got a hill full of colorful sculptures?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've seen this before. I've only been to Oregon like 3 times, but
and I just lived there.
I mean, if you're driving through Idaho, you have stopped at the gas station with the donkeys and the llamas, alpacas. It's the only gas station
in Idaho.
In Idaho, in southern Idaho. Some of these places are just fixtures.
It's like,
sorry,
what's that
Idaho,
place?
we're envious because you don't have the population density that we...
Of Idaho?
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Is it Wall, South Dakota? That place?
Oh, yeah.
Wall, that's
I've never been to South Dakota.
Totally.
I haven't been there either, but I
stopped there a couple of times in my various travels, and on one of the stops in Wall, South Dakota, my dog, let's just say, barked ferociously for a long time at a giant statue of 2 horses pulling a statue wagon that you sit in to take photos.
That's amazing. My dog would do that too.
Yep, she was not amused, but everyone around thought it was hilarious. Look at that dumb dog barking at those giant horse statues. She scared them so bad they couldn't move.
Has anybody ever been to Thermopolis? And I think it's Wyoming. And it has hot springs, and it's called Thermopolis.
Fantastic.
Uh-huh.
Nope.
And they had a place that had pancakes, $1 a pancake.
That looked like the Ice Kingdom there for a second, Kate.
We get pancakes cool. on ship for free.
Yep.
Yeah, I was trying to do 1.5, but I hit 15.
All right. There we go.
That reminds me of when I drove across country with my brother, and we went through the top part of Texas, and the only thing we did in Texas was spend one night in a hotel, and I woke up and made a Texas-shaped waffle.
Nice.
Yeah, Texas-shaped waffle.
Yeah, they had a Texas-shaped waffle maker.
I bet it was more delicious than a regularly shaped waffle, too.
Yep.
So back to this idea of 3D printing, we got some listeners thinking, are 3D scans made of specimens when we find them so that we can offer that data for 3D printing? And I think we've done that in the past, right? The photogrammetry of the whale fall?
Yeah, which is on the website. Well, there's actually 3 of us now trying to use some free software called Colpix. And we've managed, thanks to Kim, get a bunch of pictures of, so when we do a 360 of something, she's back there clicking wildly on the stills, and also with our digital still camera. So you take these hundreds of photos and throw them at this software, and it makes this point cloud model. But all 3 of us have failed horribly. We've got so far we've got a whole bunch of spots on the screen. So.
Well, so today, if we see any ripple marks, we want to get those 360 pictures and take as many of them as we can to try to do the same thing. We want to reconstruct them because they might be the deepest ones ever seen, if we can find some of them.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, and then we can reconstruct them.
So I think I've given up, but Antonella and Jake have both used that separate pursuit of their careers, and you know, in their labs, so they have some formal training in it, and they actually know how to use it.
So that I could beg them for help.
Yeah, you should ask them how the 3D model's coming along. So it's, and Gabby's also done a bunch of that work pioneering in the day before there was freeware to download. So she could tell you how much work it is to make a point cloud model.
The whalefall 3D model is available on our website. Just search for whalefall 3D and you can see a really cool 3D model. Can kind of fly around. Never thought a dead whale skeleton would be so interesting. That was from a few years ago when that whalefall was first discovered. They reconstructed the 3D model from over 600 still images.
Yeah, from what I understand, you need at least a couple hundred images. Is that right? K2 says you need less.
You're not on chat, Gabby.
She doesn't want to go there. It's painful
That's okay.
memories of her PhD days. Many hours. Now we just download some software and hit go.
Thanks for your question. Keep those questions coming on nautiluslive.org. We are at a depth of about 1,720 meters. A little over halfway towards, well, just about halfway towards our final depth of about 3,370 meters. We do appreciate viewers joining us from around the world. It looks like we've got folks joining us from the US, Norway, the UK, Sweden, the Netherlands, Canada, and Australia. That's who's popping up on our website. We got other viewers watching on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us.
Blue water warriors.
Yeah, your tectonic turtles on the blue water part of the dive today. It's a long descent, so keep those questions coming. So we're getting some more questions about exactly where we are. We talked a lot about the mapping, but not as much about Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument, which is where we have been operating here for a couple of weeks and will continue to do so after this expedition.
That is a good question. Where are we? I have no clue.
Well, I think we're going.
I flew into Hawaii and got on a boat, and we traveled for what seemed like forever.
Yes, rocking quite a bit from side to side. I also seem to recall.
If I had to jump in a life raft tomorrow and start paddling, I would have no idea which way to go.
Yeah, that's a very unexpected thing about life on a boat that I wasn't quite prepared for. This is my first time at sea, and one of my goals is to see the sunrise every day, which I've done so far. But when you come up from below decks, which is where my cabin is, I have no earthly clue in which direction the sun will be rising, because it could be anywhere.
The trade winds are prevailing from same direction every day, right?
Mostly, yep. Mostly from the east-northeast.
I'd say go that way. That's your best. That's probably your best bet. Maybe run into an atoll. This Marine National Monument is a very awesome place. It's not only just important for its biological diversity, also very important culturally to the indigenous Hawaiian cosmology. You can learn a lot more about that on our website. But there's also something happening right now that if you're interested in, you can get involved. There is a review going on that just started while we've been out here at sea to consider designated Papahānaumokuākea not just a marine national monument, but a national marine sanctuary. The protections that are in place for this place right now do not allow any extractive processes, no mining, no fishing, only research and cultural practices. And the National Marine Sanctuary designation would strengthen and add an additional layer to those protections.
That's happening also along the west coast.
Yeah, they're considering another one in California.
Yeah.
If you're interested in learning more about this, you can also have time to provide public comment. The public comment period is open now, and I believe it will be open for another month or two. So you can go to our website, nautiluslive.org, click on Papahānaumokuākea to get to their website and find that news article about the consideration of a marine sanctuary.
So that also, that if it does become a sanctuary, that gives some future funding to do more research. Is that correct?
I'm not sure it's about so much the funding, but it's more about a different layer of protection. Marine monuments can be designated by executive order, but that means that they could also be reversed by executive order, whereas marine sanctuary designation cannot. So it just adds another layer of protection there.
Yeah, I think that any funding for exploration, et cetera, would still come through the Office of National Marine Sanctuaries under NOAA. Either way.
Does anyone know how wide the swath is that they're considering off of California to connect Monterey Sanctuary and Channel Islands?
No clue.
I'm not sure, but I'm sure that we can sort it out with a little bit of research here.
I think it's pretty similar to what they have in place for the Monterey National Marine Sanctuary.
It's been pretty fun the last couple of years. We've started out in Los Angeles, and basically pulled out of the harbor and started poking around there, and then we travel up the whole west coast and grab one group of scientists and poke around in their area, and then drop them off, worn out, exhausted, and tired, but happy, and grab another group and continue poking around and work our way all the way up to British Columbia. It's just some amazing corals, sponges, and fish along the way.
And octopods.
Yeah.
So that public comment period is open until January 31st, 2022, and there are also some public meetings that you can join on Zoom if you're interested in learning more about this consideration or to provide your opinion on protections for this area where we've been operating and bringing you these amazing views of these sponge and coral communities live on the interwebs. Thanks so much for your question. Was it hard to learn how to pronounce Papahānaumokuākea? This is a question coming in. Just like anything else, it took practice. So is this our 10th or 11th dive of this expedition? I've lost track of all things.
It is. We started out with dive number
1884.
1884, and we're on 1894. I failed horribly at math, but I should be able to figure that out.
Yeah, this is the 11th, and then we would have three more: Tamana South, Paul Seamount, and then the second to last seamount in the chain. To refresh myself on the name of that one.
And we are expecting a 12-hour dive today. That includes our time to the bottom and time to the surface. Thanks so much for your questions, viewer land. We got someone wondering if we celebrated Thanksgiving.
We sure did.
Yep.
It's quite a feast.
Stuffing.
Oh, stuffing. We celebrated Thanksgiving by having a lovely meal and then a dive that dove later that same evening. So we were all thankful to get back in the water after losing a day due to the weather the previous day. So yeah, we had a great Thanksgiving here on the ship. We're pretty well taken care of. Definitely well fed.
They nailed the turkey.
Oh man, that was a delicious turkey.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why we've been seeing so many sharks around the ship. They smell the turkey as well.
I'm still kind of traumatized from that pumpkin pie though.
Well, what was traumatizing, Tam?
I didn't expect the cinnamon.
Oh.
Yeah, just a little pinch of sugar and it's really good.
A viewer says, what time is it there? It looks very dark where you are. If you're looking, yeah, we're in the blue water part of our dive. The only lights down there are the lights we bring with us. And we are in the control van, which is also quite dark. It's dark all the time, though, day and night. But local time here, you can see we just switched to the back deck. You can see it is quite dark out there. Local time, Hawaii Standard Time, it's 1:13 a.m. We are your tectonic turtles, midnight to 4 a.m. watch. It's a 24-hour operation, though. When the ROVs are diving, we just roll through 4-hour shifts, hand off to our counterparts on the 4 to 8 and 8 to 12, and then at noon to 4 p.m. we do it all again. Just past 2,000 meters in depth.
Who thinks we're going to see some ripple marks?
Totally. You know what I bet we see?
Ripple marks?
Rocks.
So it's not
Chances
just
are low.
ripple marks, but symmetrical.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
That's what would show us wave action.
Right. Otherwise, it's just current.
Stupid old current.
Stupid.
Oh, come on. Come on.
How does that work? What are the details there? I heard you guys discussing it before, but I wasn't.
So wave ripple.
This might be a great time for the telestrator.
Telestrator.
Oh, you can draw on the blue
telestrator.
screen. Is that going out to our viewers?
Yes, it is.
Oh, friends, you're about to see the telestrator in action.
So a wave ripple is symmetrical and a current ripple is not. Did you see it?
Yeah.
Dan? Yeah. And so a wave ripple only forms where you have basically an oscillating flow, right? And so it creates this form, this symmetrical form, whereas a current ripple picks sediment up from one side and deposits on the steep side. And so when we're seeing these symmetrical ripples that also are, these ripples also have their crests will what is called bifurcate, and so a crest will move into two crests, will make two crests, and that is also indicative of a wave ripple. So when we're seeing these at deep in the deep ocean, and we've seen them at about 3,000 meters already, so we're trying to find some deeper ones, it's basically confirming that we have waves that are interacting with the bottom of the ocean, which shouldn't be happening at these depths,
Yeah,
unless
how's that possible?
Because luckily we have Emil who did his PhD on it sitting right next to us. And when I said, what are waves doing at the bottom of the ocean? I was actually, when I saw those wave ripples, he was sitting right next to me and he said, I'll tell you what they're doing.
Yeah, I wasn't able to follow the conversation because we were doing something up here that was.
Yeah.
So the Hawaiian Ridge is known to be is now known because of those radar satellites that we were talking about earlier. When they, you beat down all the, you remove the tides from the signal, you remove the surface waves driven by the wind and mean sea level, you end up with these, still you see some displacements caused by these internal waves that have wavelengths of 80 to 100 kilometers. Generated by the tide as it sweeps past the Hawaiian Ridge. So that led to a multi-million-dollar experiment funded by the National Science Foundation to study how much energy was being transferred from the tides into these internal waves along the Hawaiian Ridge. But they propagate north and south away from the ridge, and so this Wentworth seamount chain is probably being bathed in internal wave energy. And it's so if folks visualize internal waves at all, they think of maybe a two-layer fluid like oil and vinegar, and a wave at the interface. But in the deep ocean, where it's not just two layers, but like many, many, many layers, if it's continually stratified as you get deeper and deeper, the waves propagate at an angle through the water column, and so they propagate in like a beam of energy. So these beams of energy could be coming from the Hawaiian Ridge and reaching the slopes of these seamounts that we're exploring, or go down to the seafloor, bounce off, and come back up and hit these seamounts that we're exploring. So it would take some very high-resolution modeling and observations to try to reproduce that. But we've been in contact with the oceanographer at the University of Hawaii who might do just that, try running some simulations.
And so this is the first actual observations that confirm the theoretical understanding of those waves existing at these depths. These geologic sediment formations are the first observations that directly support the theoretical understanding.
Uh-huh.
And was this something that you were looking for on this expedition? Was it something that was one of the science goals, or did it kind of?
No, I was just standing in the lounge and I saw the wave ripples and I said, what are those doing there? But really, Emma was literally sitting right next to me when I said out loud, wave ripples, what are they doing there?
Yeah,
so it was a weird coincidence.
it had been in the back of my mind that they could influence our operations here. Because there is some weak, deep, steady currents around the Hawaiian Ridge, but I don't think they're strong enough to give you the sort of currents that Herc has been dealing with on these ridges,
right?
Where they're a half knot or so.
And so what we're saying is that if we have enough of these oscillatory currents or wave action to make the ripples, it also can influence the biology, and it might be one of the reasons why we're getting these denser communities, because the currents here are continual and they're active all the time coming off the ridge. They're constant sources of food.
As opposed to being seasonal with temperature changes.
Right. And another thing I was thinking about is if we're getting oscillatory action and we're getting like this wave type action, could we also get a way in to bring the food in, but also clean the filter feeder off, right? So that sometimes we see sponges and they're just chocked full of sediment and stuff and they don't look so healthy.
All right.
I'm wondering if, this is just a wild question out of nowhere, if oscillatory energy in the water column is helping keeping them healthy, cleaning them, as well as bringing them nutrients.
So it's kind of a Goldilocks zone. They need to have enough sediment and nutrients moving in the water column to stay alive, but not so much that they get buried.
Yes. So I'm wondering what the perfect combination is, and if we're getting these internal waves coming off the Hawaiian Ridge, is that something that's beneficial in both ways?
So the ripples that we have seen, have they been oriented in a similar fashion with some respect to the Hawaiian Ridge?
Well, because they're symmetrical, they don't have a flow direction. If they had a flow direction, they would be current ripples. And we have seen some current ripples, and Emil and I were talking about the potential direction they were indicating. It's another reason why Emil and I are constantly asking about the current direction and the current strength. We're trying to basically reconstruct its relationship to the Hawaiian Ridge. And that was something that Stephen also said. So when you look at the map and you see it doesn't have an obstruction, the seamount we're diving on right now doesn't have an obstruction between it and the Hawaiian Ridge. So the wave action, those internal waves, that beam that Emil is talking about, might have a higher chance of impacting this seamount that we're diving on right now. So that gives us maybe more of a chance of even finding the wave ripples at this depth. The only scientific paper I could find that recorded wave ripples thus far, the deepest they were, I think, was 4,500 feet. And the time that we've seen them in this expedition was at, I think, 9,000 feet. So almost 3,000 meters.
So we should, I was thinking about that the other day, we should come up with a telltale that we can put on the ROV somewhere that performs a similar function that a windsock would. I mean, we can get some, help us to determine the strength of the current. So if we sat still on the bottom, for example, and the telltale was doing something, that would give you some metric.
Yeah, it would be useful, especially for the filter feeders, you know, the biology in the deep sea. I've thought that the last time we were out here in 2018. So we could see both types of currents. We could see both types of ripples. We could see current ripples or wave ripples. We might see both. And there are places where, for instance, when you have a canyon or something that channelizes the water, and it basically constricts the water, and so that water, due to the Bernoulli effect, will speed up. So there'll be areas where that, and that would create more of a constant current. And in that instance, you would see evidence of current ripples, the ones that are not symmetrical.
But they're perpendicular to the direction that the energy is coming from, right?
Exactly.
They're not parallel to it. It's not like it's cutting
their
grooves.
crests are perpendicular, right?
So even if we can't tell, like, if it's going, let's say, straight east or straight west, we know that it's perpendicular to whatever we see on those lines.
Right, and we should be able to see by the actual distance between the troughs, probably the current direction if we do see current ripples. Wave ripples will just be oscillatory flow or oscillatory energy in the water column interacting with the bed surface.
Would they still have an axis?
Well, these internal waves can be steered by bathymetry too, so that's what's happening in Monterey Canyon. They're generated down by Big Sur. The Sur platform sticks out, and the tide sweeps across that, generates these waves, and they propagate north. Then they get focused by the bends in the canyon and end up propagating east into the bay, into the Monterey Submarine Canyon, the portion that lies inside the bay. So it's really, it gets pretty complex. You have to have very accurate bathymetry to try to model this.
So when you say steered by bathymetry, you mean it's a fancy way of saying it's impacted by the topography, right? Like it's impacted by these obstructions or these big valleys.
Yeah.
The energy comes along. It's got to have somewhere to go. It can go down in a valley or down in a crevasse like we've been seeing.
Yeah, and I think of it, I don't know if this will be helpful to anybody else, but the beam of energy that Emil's talking about, bouncing off one surface at an incidence angle and then being